Hello, everyone. Back with part two of blunders from Grandmasters in chess. This first game we're going to look at took place in 2001. We have Grandmaster Boris Avruk versus Grandmaster Gennady Timoshenko with the black pieces. In here, um, we have white to move here, and you can see that black has a pawn advantage, but uh, black's problem here is how to um, resolve the checks, how to get away from white's checks. Of course, white will love to create a situation of perpetual check, and if black can solve this problem, he can mate white here. Okay, and or just trade the queens and go into easily winning king and pawn endgame. So let's see what took place. So after queen d2 check, Timoshenko interposed his queen on e2. Of course, he would love to trade here. Avruk played queen to f4 check, right, trying to keep the show going. King e1, sheltering the king, of course, and also keeping the pawns protected. King comes to h2. In here, Timoshenko plays h3 with the threat of mate on a g2. So how is white to deal with this? Avruk plays queen to c1 check. King f2. And I don't know if you can see it, but here is our one move blunder. After king f2, Avruk just mated Timoshenko with queen g1, and that's some kind of move that makes you just shake your head right there, just sit at the board after the game is over. So what could black have done to prevent such tragedy here? Well, of course, besides playing king f2, it's possible to just, of course, play queen d1, but then you're still facing checks after this move. So let's go back. Instead of this move, h3, which seems very natural, my recommendation is g3 check. And after king h1, for example, um, black can just force the exchange of queens. And the same applies after king g1, just simply queen f2 check, forcing the exchange of queens. So we could see that that leads to a winning ending, winning king and pawn ending for black. So the critical move here is king h3. And black has the same kind of goals in mind, is to just simply try to avoid the checks here. And so this can be done by, for example, queen e6 check. And this, of course, will force the trade of queens after king to h4. The queen will come here. And of course, if queen takes, then if queen takes queen on c4, then this b pawn will go to c4 and just queen easily. So the queen being on prise forces the white king to step in closer. And then after the simple move queen takes f4, king takes f4, then just simply king f2, and that would win the game for black. So unfortunately, things did not go that way for Timoshenko, and he played the very natural move. Of course, there's time scrambles and such, and this was a long game. This was g3 check was played after move 93. So these players, or 94 rather. So these players had been playing for a long time, and the move looks very natural. But I'm sorry, not G3, but the move H3 was played. So, um, unfortunately, uh, for Black, um, he played the fateful move H3, which of course was not the loss, but I think it gives Black White more drawing chances, and he just happened to fall into this trap here. All right, so let's look at our next one. Next position is from the 2002 tournament in Linares, and with the white pieces, we have none other than legendary Grandmaster Alexander Belyavsky with the white pieces versus Grandmaster Leif Erland Johansson, who relatively unknown, but at the time was 20 years old, rated about 2,500. So he was what we would call your, average GM, where Alexander Belyavsky is what we would call a super GM at the time, having defeated the very, very strong, very top level of the chess world, and been candidate for World Chess Championship on a few occasions. So here at the move 66, Alexander is pressing. So he probably was feeling like, hey, I'm the stronger player. Um, I should try to outplay this guy. So after F5, um, Johansson simply continues to check here. He plays Queen E4, and Belyavsky moves his king to G3 and King H7, and now F3 to drive the queen out. Now Queen B1 with the idea of obviously going to Queen B1. So King F4. So we see Belyavsky has this idea, right, making this king march, and basically trying to set up either a mating net around the black king or just be in position for a favorable endgame once the queens are traded off, right? Because the white king is in the middle of the board. However, you have to be careful with the heavy pieces on the board because after Queen B8, Belyavsky was forced to resign, or actually he didn't even have to resign because it was checkmate on the board as he walked right into uh, this mate here on the board. So sometimes you can overpress in positions, and it seems like that's what happened in this particular scenario. So this one was a howler right here. This move king to f4. I mean, you talk about picking the worst move on the board. Um, a move where you're just walking into mate like that is definitely up there. Now we step into the time machine once again and go back to the Soviet Championship of 1949. The white pieces Alexander Kotov versus Tigran Petrosian, who would become world champion in 1963 after defeating Botvinnik. But this time he was a young man and prone to make mistakes, as many young people do. And him having the black pieces against Kotov in this seemingly placid exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit decline. After all, what could go wrong here? Right, we're just still in the opening. But here, Petrosian with the black pieces falls into a relatively old school trap here. Bishops are exchanged, and he falls for this move, knight d5, which is one of the reasons, tactical reasons behind the move queen c2, is that after this bishop exchange on e7, the queen comes up to e7, and then there's no protection over the bishop on c8. So after knight takes d5, c takes d5, queen takes c8, bishop b5 check, and then Petrosian just had to resign as he was just simply down a bunch of material here. So again, that's little tactic that you learn when you're first studying the Queen's Gambit Exchange variation. So one of the reasons why you put that queen on c2 is to have that idea available. So now back into the time capsule. Uh, okay, so now we pick up and at the Amsterdam Interzonal 1964 with the white pieces you have Klaus Darga versus Levente Langel, and we pick it up after move number 38. Knight takes d4, and so it's black to move here, and rook e1 check is played. Knight e2, f4, g takes f4, and now rook e6, king f2, and now black actually blunders here by playing rook 6 takes e2. Right, he had a tactical oversight. However, his blunder bluff worked because after this move, rook takes e2, white actually resigned. And if you're wondering why he resigned, is because he saw a hallucination in chess. Because he actually resigned in a winning position, and you really don't see grandmasters do it too often. But here is a great example. And the reason he resigned is because he figured that after rook takes e2, then bishop takes h4, king g2. And he figured that he would have to leave the rook unprotected. And then after rook takes e2, that black would just simply be up a piece. But as many of you out there are probably holding your heads right now, white simply wins in this continuation after rook takes e2, bishop takes h4 check, and then simply king e3 holding everything, and now it is black who has to resign. But there, my friends, is an example of a strong master resigning, just being basically swindled by his opponent. But actually, black had oversight of his own and saw that he thought that he was winning when he was actually losing. And white actually believed his opponent, and he resigned, only to see right after the resignation that he had a winning position. At least that's the story, and that's usually how it happens. When you make a blunder, you usually see the blunder right after you actually make the move. Here's another example from Monte Carlo 1902, and with the white pieces, Ignaz von Popiel versus George Marco. And this is probably the most famous example of a master resigning in a totally one position. So we picked up the game after 32 e5, and white captures, and now black plays rook takes f1 check, rook takes f1 check, queen e7, knight f5 from white, queen takes e5 from Marco. Popiel plays rook d1, doubling up on the d file, and threatening, of course, to win the bishop on d4, right? You have the knight on f5, the queen on d3, and the rook on d1, right? The bishop, it seems the bishop cannot move for all intents and purposes because the rook on d7 is unprotected. And here, Marco resigned, right? And the reason why this game is so famous is because, first of all, the strength of the players, but the move that was missed was bishop g1, just winning right on the spot here. Bishop g1. Now you can see the tides have turned because the queen is on prise from the rook, and mate is threatened at the same time. The only defense really for black here is maybe a move like knight to d3, but then he just drops the queen. Okay. Um, so this is probably the most famous game of Grandmaster Rizani in a totally one position. All right, so this game took place again at the Linares tournament in 1992 between Nigel Short with the white pieces and Alexander Beliavsky with the black pieces, as we saw earlier. And I thought it was fitting to end this video with Beliavsky once again. Now, Nigel Short has the white pieces, and this is 1992, so at the time, Nigel Short is in his prime. In 93, he would actually play for the world title. Beliavsky was still very strong at the time, so both players are in the top 10 in the world at the time. As you can see here, white is dominating the position. Although material is equal, you can see the position of the white king in the middle just standing out as a glaring beacon in the position. And also the position of the minor pieces gives white a pleasant advantage. Him also having this outside pass pawn makes the game very problematic for black. White definitely has winning chances in this position here. So Nigel basically adopts a strategy to, of course, advance the pass pawn, and probably with the idea of eventually forcing black to sacrifice one of the pieces in order to stop the pawn, and then thereby transferring into a winning game. So bishop d3 with the idea of taking control of the b5 square to advance the pawn. Notice how the knight on d3 is also protecting g2. King tries to get the black king tries to come closer to the center. Bishop b7, and now knight d5. And what knight d5 does is block the black king from being able to come out to e7. It also covers the c7 square so that the black knight can't go to c7. The black knight is not able to go to f6, so this knight on e8 is being thoroughly controlled. For this knight to get in the game, black either has to play a move like knight g7 and then try to get in that way, or give up this bishop, which is helping to blockade on the b file. So things are looking pretty desperate for black. So Beliavsky plays the move f6, which of course gives black another way out for the king, right? Maybe drive the king back and play a move like king f7, and he can get the king into the game that way. Of course, if he captures with his knight, here on f6, of course, black can capture here, right? Or perhaps he could even just capture here straight away, right? And just basically have some counterplay going on in the position. So with that in mind, Nigel wants to try to keep things under control, right? He wants to, keep as least counterplay in the position as possible. So what he does is he plays a sensible move, and he moves forward with the king to e6, right? So clamping down on a position even more, and he's still threatening that pawn. So he basically stops the king from moving, and he's still threatening that pawn. However, there's one thing that we learn in chess when we start playing, and that is tactics are king. So no matter how grand the strategies and plans are, the tactics always have to be sound. And so what happens here is he walks into a one move checkmate after 58 king e6, as Beliavsky ends the game with bishop c8. And so that was just like a horrible loss. And I found it interesting because in one of the earlier games we discussed, we looked at Beliavsky with the white pieces versus Johansson, and how he was mated by the queen on c8. Belyavsky's king was on another light square g4, and here Belyavsky has a chance to actually return the favor or pay it forward, if you will, to Nigel Short by administering mate on c8, but this time with the bishop. So that is it for our part 2. We'll be coming back with part 3, 4, and 5, or what have you. There's so many of these type of interesting anomalies that happen at grandmaster level, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit all the buttons that you're supposed to, like, subscribe, thumbs up, etc., because it helps move the video along the algorithm of YouTube, so that when you search, my videos will start to pop up more and more frequently, so that others can also see the content. Also, please check my links below. There's a donation button. Please donate to my channel. And also check the links below that. There's DVDs and videos, also on openings and middle games, etc., that you might like to also check out. Also, if you have any other questions, just let me know in the message box below. And also check out all the other content. I have about 600 videos on this particular channel that deal with openings, middle games, end games, all things pertaining to chess. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you guys soon.